Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Hello, this is and Court, and welcome to EnvironMental Podcast.
Yes, this is our podcast where we deep dive into different aspects of sustainability and we have different conversations with people about them. If you like this type of content, please like and subscribe so that it shows up on your feed more often.
Love it. Yes. And today we are super excited. We are joined by Breene Murphy, who is the Vice President of Strategy and Marketing at Carbon Collective. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to talk today.
So excited. So can you please tell us a little bit about Carbon Collective and what you do?
Yeah, so Carbon Collective is the first online financial or online investment advisor that is 100% focused on solving climate change. Wow. And what we do is we create sustainable investment portfolios, both for individuals and for businesses through their 401k program. So if you're like, I want my company where I work to have like sustainable investment options, like this is something that we can help you with. So that's what we do.
Cool.
Yeah, so the reason we got started was a few years back, our co-founders were reading Project Drawdown. I'm not sure if you've ever read or heard of that book. Mm-hmm. Project Drawdown is amazing. If you have not checked it out and you care about sustainability and solving climate change, it has a list of, at the time it was 82 solutions, and it's now 93 solutions to climate change, with how much you need to invest in them and how much emissions they'll reduce, and and how much money that they will make the economy. So it's like a very clear plan that gets us to drawdown, which is to get to zero emissions. Yeah. And it has like so many amazing solutions that are really incredible. I mean, a lot of ones that we talk about that we know, but it's like, solar, wind, electric vehicles, batteries, like everyone's like, yeah. But then there's like all these other ones where it's like wetlands conservation, and you're looking at like aforestry and like aquaculture, like sustainable aquaculture, and dynamic glass and building retrofits, and vehicle to grid technology, and like waste to energy, and like family planning and women's education, because like they find that the more educated women are, like, and this is especially happens in the third world, it's like the better the society does in terms of emissions reductions. So there's 93 of them. There's so much there. But one of the key things that came out of that was just the realization that we had all the technology necessary to solve climate change.
Yeah. So Project Drawdown, sorry, it's not a book. It's a project online.
It's a book. It's a project online. Cool. It's there, so anybody can research it. They have really amazing people there that are putting on events and giving great talks. It's one of our favorite resources.
Wonderful.
If the insight is we have everything we need, then it's like, well, why aren't we doing it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. And so it's clearly like a level of collective will that needs to help solve climate change. Right. And there's a very various methods, like one of the easiest ones, which is like we're in the process of going through, not one of the easiest ones, the one that comes top of mind is like political will, right? And so the Inflation Reduction Act, I think it's going to be voted on tomorrow. So if you're listening to this, I'm in the past telling you, hopefully sharing a time of uncertainty that you will then be able to smile back upon and realize like how great it was to be in that naive state where you could just wish and hope, and you're seeing all good things. But political will is one way, right? There's other forms, like kind of like religious or cultural will, and we were looking at the will of money, right? Like what it can do, right? The market clearly has some form of will, and because like we were looking for ways where you could have individual action scale to collective solutions, and the co-founders, their names Zach Stein, James Regalinsky, and this was like their core thesis. And so, but when they went to look at what the options were being given in the market, the finance industry is really in bed with fossil fuels, and they basically found that there were no good options. And this is even at places where it's like Betterment's climate impact portfolio was featuring like debt from the company that lit the Gulf of Mexico on fire, right? So it's like probably not sustainable, guys. Just going to throw that out there as a possibility. Mm-hmm. You may want to rethink what you're doing. I don't know what their portfolio is doing now, but like at there was a time where they had that. So it's like when that's the issue, like what we're seeing is you can't repackage like basically BS stuff into something that is actually valuable. And so and the reason why is like they had in the most enlightened form of investing was ESG, but that was born out of a place of evaluating risk. So for those people who don't know what ESG is, it's evaluating like environmental, that's the E, social is the S, and governance is the G, right? That all sounds good, but if you give different weightings for those, you can get really interesting results on like what passes an ESG test, right? So for example, Chevron and Exxon might rank really high on governance and therefore get into a lot of ESG portfolios. That seems wrong to me because they're like basically creating the destruction of our planet right now. I think that's bad. And so that's the framework they're using. And so what we were looking is like, it's looking at risk. It's very opaque. It doesn't have a clear theory of change. There are some better versions of it, but even in its highest form, it's like evaluating which companies are sustainable, basically. Because if you're a sustainable company, that company has less risk. But that ends up like the output of that is, let's go to Google because they have all of their data centers are powered by solar power, right? And that's good. We really want to encourage that, but that's also not going to solve climate change,
right?
It's a step. It's not enough, right? And so what we did is take more of like a science-based approach. And so there were climate scientists and economists that were this is like inside the IPCC. This is inside Project Drawdown. It's like, the International Energy Agency. And it's sort of like, we need to stop investing in fossil fuels. Full stop. Right. Yeah. And then as soon as you go into the market, though, it's beyond Chevron and Exxon, right? It's beyond those companies that you buy gas from on the corners, right? So we looked at the emissions from, Zach and James looked at the emissions from where this was all coming from. And it's utilities, energy, which is fossil fuels, it's oil and gas, industrials and materials. They're for what are called sectors of the market. And they have 85% of the emissions, but they're actually only 19% of the market, right? And so what we did is we cut all of those out. So it's not just doing like a superficial level divestment cut. We're doing the full thing. And then the thing that climate scientists are also doing is and economists, because they're kind of working in conjunction right now, which is like, how do we actually solve this problem? And so the basic thing that they said is like, we need to invest between $5 and $9 trillion every year into climate solutions, right? Yeah. So how can we disproportionately invest in the good things? And this is where something like right now we're talking about the Inflation Reduction Act that is potentially like $370 billion towards that goal. But you can see even that big number is still woefully short. And so what we did is like, we looked at the solutions from Project Drawdown, like we were saying, we mapped them to the publicly traded markets. And we came up with 169 companies solving climate change. And these are not the Googles. Those like really want to applaud them for their sustainability efforts. But it's looking at what these companies are building. And it's like, one of my favorite companies is Nuvi Holdings, and they're helping electrify school buses for kids, right? Wow. It's like that kind of stuff. Okay. So there's a bunch of companies some companies they're retrofitting old buildings so that they're electrified and they have greater insulation, which is like way better to live in. Some are like focused on transportation, electrifying like fleets. Some are focused on like individual electric vehicles, batteries. Like there's all these companies building this really amazing stuff. And for me, when I see all that gives me like a result is like a hope that we can actually do this. And that's one of my favorite things about the portfolios. When you actually dive into them, you're like, people are doing amazing things. And then the last piece of what we did is kind of recognizing that the Google, while not enough, is still really interesting. We want more companies to become like Google. Like, there's no reason that Costco, like a brand that I particularly like, can't have solar panels on all their warehouses and have electric fleets delivering all their foodstuffs and have electric chargers instead of their stupid gas stations, and they can still have that really delicious, like, cheap cheese pizza. Like, I'm good with that. Like, they don't need to change that. But like, there's a reason why, like, they can, like, see a pathway. And, what we'd like to show, like, these organizations is, like, again, under this old framework, there's still this idea that it's reducing your risk, right? It's actually improving, your business case. And there's even something that, like, a lot of us has felt, like, there have been some of us that have solar on their houses and electric vehicles. It's been a nice time. I feel very fortunate that I got to do that. Not everybody does, right? And so, like, there's a lot of privilege there, but, like, I did not feel the inflationary effects as much as other people because I did not have, like, very much exposure to all the gas prices. It would be great if other people had that feeling too.
Yeah.
Right? And that's why, like, I really like the Inflation Reduction Act, right? Like, you get more people that have these, very standardized, costs for solar on their house. You could, very standardized charging amounts for their electric vehicles. It becomes a lot cheaper and frankly, just more convenient. I mean, I don't think people talk enough about how creepy gas stations are.
Creepy?
Yeah, they are. It's just, like, it's transactional. Like, it's dirty. There's oil stains everywhere. Like people are going to this station. It's like, what are they going to get? Like, I think gas stations are creepy. So, but anyways,
I feel you actually there. I had this not going to, like, go into it on this, but I had a very creepy experience at a gas station in Kansas. And it was just like you don't think about it in normal time, but no one else was around. It was just me and the gas station and the attendants. I'm with you.
It's a terrible experience. Like, wouldn't you rather either charge at your house and not go to a gas station on a day-to-day basis? Or if you are traveling, all the electric car chargers, right? Because, one of the problems is it does take a little bit longer. Usually it takes like 20 minutes to charge. They're by, like, coffee shops. Like, much better experience. Yeah. Like, do I want to go to a gas station or do I want to go to a coffee shop? I'm picking the coffee shop.
Yeah.
So basically we take all those insights, right? We divest, we reinvest in climate solutions. We advocate for more groups to take these deflationary measures, and become more sustainable. And we create portfolios in a balanced way. We include green bonds. And so an individual could come in and they can invest their money in a way that is divested from fossil fuels and reinvested in climate solutions. And they can have it be allocated. That's, like, kind of a fancy, like, finance word. I know you two were saying that you hadn't had much exposure. An allocation is how much money you have in stocks and bonds. It can include other asset classes like real estate or private equity, which is, like, owning private companies. There's a lot. Crypto would be another asset class, but it's like, what percentage do you hold of all of these? They have different levels of risk. And so it's about creating a portfolio that has the appropriate amount of risk for the goals that you have. Historically, the standards are, if you're saving up for retirement, like maybe a lot of people are, and you're 55, your risk level is going to be different than if you're, like, 30, right? If you're 30, there really hasn't been any 20-year period in which the market hasn't done very well. And so, like, you can have 80-90% in stocks and only 10% or 20% in bonds. Whereas if you're close to retirement, like, you need to, like, make sure that you have, like, some preservation of capital before you go in. So for those people, we'll have more bonds in their portfolio than stocks. Then the thing that's really cool, is not only do we do that for individuals, but for businesses, right? Businesses have a lot of money. We're talking trillions of dollars. I mean, there's literally just $1 trillion of lost 401k money, where people that have changed jobs and never moved over their 401ks.
Wow.
So there's trillions of dollars of this money that is parked in like very standard investments. The vast majority are in, like, passive index funds. just like a very quick explainer, passive index funds are basically holding a lot of stocks in very small amounts. And so you reduce your risk and you're basically betting on the entire market rather than any individual company or thesis. You reduce your expenses. It has been shown to be a much better style of investing. We take this approach as well. We're big believers in it, with our caveat of saying fossil fuels are not supposed to be in a portfolio, and we need to disproportionately invest in climate solutions. So that gets to the business level. So we would like to get to a place in which we're unlocking many businesses who have a lot of employees, who care a lot about sustainability, who care a lot about climate, to add this very simple benefit to their company, increase some employee engagement. It won't cost more, but it will have that effect of getting more and more money into climate solutions.
Yeah.
So that's like the cool stuff. There's lots of other things, but I want to check in, like, what questions do you have like after all of that?
Yeah, that's so cool. I feel like this is really exciting.
And overwhelming too, right?
And a little overwhelming.
Yeah.
I think out of all of the climate solutions that we have spoken about, like, we do these calls just about every other week and put podcasts out quite a bit. And we have been doing EnvironMental podcasts for more than a year.
Mm-hmm.
We've never heard about investing in this way before.
No one's done it.
That's what I'm asking. Is like, A, why do you think no one has done it?
Mm-hmm.
And B, like, I guess, like, tell me a little bit more about Carbon Collective, like, as a business. We'll get how, I guess.
Okay, I'll go. So why haven't other people done it?
Yeah.
So I'll start with that one. I'll start on the larger scale, right? Because this is like the vast majority of like big companies, the vanguards, right? So there are multiple reasons. One of which is they have no incentive to do it. People are still buying their products and they're caught in what's called an innovator's dilemma. And if they admit that they're big, these are billion dollar businesses.
Yeah.
And so if you have no incentive, there's no pressure on the outside, you're not going to change, right? And so like a very good example of this is like, do you remember like any of the old EVs, like the very first electric vehicles that came out? Like just the level of like how uncool they were. I'm talking pre-Prius.
Pre-Prius.
Right? It's like there was like the old Honda Insight and they were like god awful ugly, right? And this is what a car company that wants to do an electric vehicle that totally half-asses it is going to do. And that's basically what the industry has done. And it's taken a Tesla to come in and say, hey, actually this technology is superior. You guys are missing the boat, right? Like they go faster, there's fewer parts, they last longer, they're easier to maintain, they're easier to charge. Like, this is just a much better like a superior technology. And you guys are doing it so poorly that you're making a farce of it. Right. And then they help open up people's imagination for what's possible. And that's what happens in the innovator's dilemma. But there's another issue too, which I think is that framework issue. I think there's two parts of it. I talked a little bit about ESG as a framework. They started to market ESG as having impact and they were getting away with it. So this is like, but like they were stuck in
greenwashing.
They're stuck in this risk framework where it's like, oh, how can we use this to like look at risk? They weren't looking at it in how can we cause this to create impact? There's even companies that I really like that are doing like very interesting like shareholder advocacy that even have similar theories of change, but they are not going to the level of investing in climate solutions. We have not seen that. There's and so like that's the thing that we've seen is gap. So there's like a financial weighting, and then there's like just a mindset shift. of what this is. And like, that's where I think the brilliance of of Zach and James, our co-founders really are, as they kind of looked at it like from a sustainability lens first. And then that was really different. And the thing that was really cool is when you start to look at this, you start to notice other things like that are very important to tell people about, which is, and the financial services industry is kind of blind to this, which is oil and gas is a terrible investment.
Long term.
Yeah. What?
Yes, it's a terrible investment. This is like Yeah, it's like, this is investing in Blockbuster in 2002. Do you think that's a good idea? I mean, I know they still have a lot of money, right? And they still have a lot of political influence, and they still have a lot of advertising. And so it's not going to happen all at once like it did with Blockbuster, where it was like they were gone.
It's still going to crash and burn, though. I mean,
it's still going to crash and burn. But sectors of it have already done so. The coal index, right, which was a very stable industry for quite some time. The coal index dropped 99% from 2010 to 2021. That is atrocious from an investment. If that's worse than the Bitcoin backslide that's scaring everybody's friends right now. Mm-hmm. Right? Yep. Bitcoin's dropping off 60, 70%. And that is scary, right? Like if that happens, you're like, what do I do? But imagine they delisted the index, right? Fossil fuels, the energy index, right? Over a similar 10-year time period, it's growing about 0.5% a year. This is dramatically behind what has been happening in the S&P, where it's been one of the best 10-year markets. And this last year has been a little bit more complicated, but it's been one of the best 10-year runs that we've had. And so you're seeing something be like a deep laggard in a portfolio, and that's in the past, right? If you look towards the future, they're now more expensive. They have huge costs of capital. It's way more expensive to drill. Do you know how crazy it would be to drill in the Arctic, right? That would be so hard and expensive, right? Not to mention a total environmental disaster. But we're talking
right.
And then you just have the political headwinds, right? We have a carbon border adjustment that is coming in Europe, where they're going to be taxed when they come in. What is that business going to do, right? And they're more expensive, they're more polluting, they cause air pollution deaths, they create fewer jobs. We are sacrificing so much by staying invested in fossil fuels. And I don't think enough people understand that.
Yeah, or immediately get scared by the concept of de-investing, that they think that everything in their life now has to change, and they stop driving their car, and so they cling to the idea to and it's just overwhelming, so they do nothing. Yeah, it's overwhelming, so they do nothing. And that's really what we are all about, right? Is helping people who get to that point. We want to provide a space where they can learn. So when we've gone out as Carbon Collective Investing, some of the things that we've done is we showed all the climate solution stocks that are in our portfolio and why they made it in. There's a level of transparency. Now, it's hard to go through all of that. And so just reading all of it is a bear, but it's there, right? We try to create summaries for it, try to make it accessible. We also have an ultimate guide to sustainable investing, right? This is a book length project that we have on our website. It's 30,000 words, data tables and everything. Also a big project, but we just launched on Tuesday a Learn to Earn initiative, right? And because we want to democratize access to investing. If anybody's investing right now, you're in a place of privilege, right? And so what we're trying to do is anybody that has thought they needed to read about financial literacy, and we have a chapter all on financial literacy from a financial coach named Brooke Tomasetti, who's actually part of our team. She's amazing. It's if you read it and you pass a test at the end, we'll give you $100 to start investing. Nice. Wow.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. So it's even people that don't have the means to do this, we're trying to get them started. Mm-hmm. Ideally, if they're getting started early, that's a great place. And we think the knowledge is going to be more important than the money they get to invest, because the knowledge is something. that creates so much hope and opportunity and excitement. And like, I don't know how you do better than that.
Totally. When you say get started early, what does that mean in your industry, in investing?
Yeah, I mean, investing, like, basically time is more valuable than money because of compounding interest. And so, like, there are different scenarios in which if you invest like a similar amount, right, or maybe like a much smaller amount, like 10 years earlier or 15 years earlier, it will be worth significantly more money. In situations. So like the earlier you start to invest and start to set aside money, it's one of those things where it makes a big deal, but you don't always see it right away, because it's like, it's little bits of percentages, but those percentages keep happening. And I kind of started to notice it about like 3 or 4 years, where I'm like, that's like 50% more than what I had before, what I put in. And then I'm 39 now, so I've been doing it for like 10 years. And at 10 years, you're like, yeah, this is a good idea. I'm really glad I did this.
Thanks, past self. Yeah.
Yeah. And so we're like, we're trying to get people to thank their past selves, to try to go, wow, how wise was I at 24 to do this thing? And then it helped me understand the value of it. And then I started to do it a little bit. And now that I'm 34 and maybe like, I have a family or whatever, like, I'm much more comfortable.
It's amazing, because there are a lot of people, myself included. At 20, mid 20s, early 20s, I had a job that had a 401k, and I had no idea what that meant for me, or it just sat there.
Yeah, for sure. And one of
like you were saying, that's crazy that there's so much sitting that's just untouched.
Yeah, for sure. And so like, when you see that, I also think that there's become a level of boredom that has like hit the 401k market, where people are like, this is just really boring. And there's just like all this complexity baked in about like engaging with capitalism, right? Because that's what like a 401k is really doing. And there's a lot of people out there going, is capitalism working? And a lot of people are going like, no, it's not working. And so it's like, when you get to the embodiment of that, it can be difficult, right? And so I think one of the things that we look at is and this is one thing that I think is like a big myth, is like capitalism doesn't exist in a vacuum, right? It's not actually a free market. Even for like, I have like really good family friends that are like, I love the free market. And I'm like, okay, well, why are you so like invested in like, like strict borders, right? And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, that's the government. That's not capitalism.
Right.
And when you have to reckon with that, you realize like, oh yeah, like what we have, like even for like somebody who's like very conservative, like there's a lot in there where it's like, this is not a system separate and unto itself. And so what it has to be is like we don't have the right policies in place for the capitalism that we currently have. And if we are going to redefine capitalism, and that's like on the table, there's been other economic systems. There's not like a reason why capitalism needs to exist the way it does. It actually doesn't. But in the system that we do have, like, how can we all take care of ourselves and be as smart as we can? And so I see this like complexity of people like wanting to engage in their investments and being like, you know what, that's not what I want. And on the other side, all these 401k providers have gotten so bored with their offering, because it's like, here's passive investing, here's what it can do for you. And where we're saying like, hey, investing is actually a core way to help change the world for the better. And so we have a zeal and enthusiasm that is going to be like extraordinarily different. Like, we want to come talk to people, and people want to come talk to us. So it's a really different experience. And we're trying to make it easy as possible, right? So like, one of the things we're going to do, I'll give you like a hint. So it's August 11th. So I don't know when you'll release this. We do a thing in September called Green Retirement Month. And for all those people that have changed jobs in the last year, who've like, decided they want to do something new, or maybe unfortunately they've been, like laid off, they likely have money with their old 401k if they were fortunate enough to have a 401k, right? It's a pain in the butt to get that money over. right? Like if you've ever done it, it is like very detailed and painstaking. And like we have a big push in September to make it super easy with bonuses that go up as more people invest with us. The bonus structure doesn't go down because we're trying to invest, like get people to to see the value of telling other people about this. And that, because we think like we're trying to create a movement, and we want to create as many network effects as possible so that every single person's individual action scales to like a collective solution. I'm not sure if you all are familiar with Dr. Ayanna Johnson, but she's really worth checking out. And that's one of the things she's most famous for her podcast, How to Save a Planet, which she helped found. But she's actually this incredible scientist that helped like Senator Warren come up with her Blue New Deal policy. And like, she's just kind of a badass, but when she talks about things, it's like, that's what she talks about. Cause like, there's this concept of like, we should blame the corporations because it's the corporations. It's not my fault.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah. Sort of narrative on individual action. And it's like basically saying, well, how does something change then if you don't have individuals taking action?
Right. Yeah, I think this is something that like comes up a lot for us and for people that are really focused on sustainability, where like I'm doing everything I can or that I know that I can, but I also know that it's having almost no impact. And I feel like, to your point, being able to invest in this way allows people to have this larger impact that a lot of people in the sustainability community are really just like craving.
Yeah. It's a necessary part of it. So I would like to also like talk to you about like those little impacts that you have in your sustainability lives. Like one of the things we think of is like think of voting, right? Like each individual vote doesn't seem to matter that much, right? Until like, let's say there's 1 million votes, until you're the 500,000 first vote. Mm-hmm. And then that vote is so meaningful, mm-hmm. right?
Yeah.
But it takes all those other votes to make that vote valuable.
Right.
Right. And so that's what we look as like a step function, right? It's like not that valuable until all of a sudden it is like transformational.
Wow. Okay.
And so like, and this is like where we like Project Drawdown, because they talk a lot about like how important individual action actually is.
Yeah.
Because, you know, it helps, like each individual action helps you take on more individual actions. Each individual action helps other people see what you're doing, right? Mm-hmm. And can get inspired and make it demystified. But as much as you can understand your individual actions and then try to create collective solutions, that's why I really like investing. Like I do think it's one of the easiest ways to do something that takes an hour of your time and can scale really fast, right?
Yep.
Like, that's one of the reasons why I like, and is so important at this stage of solving climate change, right? Yep. So it's like, I want to continue to encourage all the behavior you're doing, because I do think like a movement needs deep encouragement, right? To be able to say like, I see you, I see what you're doing. I see that you've been composting. I see that you have solar. I see that you have, you know, EVs. I see that you're not driving as much. I see you're taking public transportation. You know, I see you're growing your own food. I see you're not buying as many shirts, you know, or clothes. I like, just to be able to say to all those people out there who are listening and they're wondering if it matters, it's like, it matters.
Yep. Thank you.
Yeah. And it's also not enough.
Right. It's also not enough.
Yeah.
And we need to keep going.
Yes. Wow. We do.
And we can.
Yeah, and places like Carbon Collective totally make that possible. I'm so excited.
Yeah. And like that, and that's what I want to have more than anything.
Yeah.
Is I want my goal as a brand, right? Because you're talking about the business before. My goal as a business is to excite people about the future, because I think it could be beautiful.
Yeah.
And then it seems like that's the main difference, really, is that like investing through you actually like inspires hope because their money is going towards things that are actually innovative solutions that we need, and not just like going into this game of Monopoly like a traditional investment would
for sure. And I think there's all these like side applications too, right? Like I take a call a week from somebody that's like, hey, how do I get a job in climate change? Like people are talking to me all the time. And one of the things I tell people is like, look, go to our list of climate solution stocks. All those companies, they're hiring, right? Those are companies solving climate change. You can basically go through there and just go, I want to check out the careers page for Hannah and Armstrong, right? I would like to get into their wetlands conservation thing or whatever they're doing. Or I want to go work for this company. Or like if you're an agency, you know, you go, hey, Nuvi Holdings, like that would be so cool if I could help do some brand work with them on their like electrification of school buses, right? So it could be business development if that's where you want to go, you know? And so for us, it's like, I would like Carbon Collective to play a role in which we help open people's minds to the possibility that things could be radically better and that they can play a role in it themselves.
Sweet.
Love that. So,
and we need them to.
We need them to. Yes. Yes.
I want them.
Everybody to.
Let's have a big unblocking session, right? Like, what's your block? You know, why? Like, what is your thing that you're afraid of? Like, how can we really like release that? How can we get it? So it's like we get money into climate, we get people into climate. You know, we get like just this focus on like we get this story about how much better the world will be in which we solve climate change. You know, we'll have more trees, we'll have cleaner air, we'll have healthier people, we'll have like more convenient, you know, transportation. You know, like this is a world like we're like healthier food. We go to more regenerative agricultural model. We'll have beautiful hillsides with farms and then creating the most delicious, healthy food that's actually sequestering carbon. That's incredible.
Yeah, and possible.
And people are doing it right now. There's like literally people working on that right now. And if you think that's so inspiring, go do it.
Yeah.
Right.
So what are the actual logistics? So if somebody wanted to kind of get involved, like what is the level of effort needed on their half? I guess?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have the individual in the 401k, the 401k for businesses. So the individual, we basically have a fairly in-depth sign-up process. This is your money. Like we want to be as careful as we can about it. So we do ask like more questions. So we ask some of the questions are just like details about like opening like a financial account. So it's like social security number and stuff. Like that stuff's fairly easy. Everyone can get through that. Then it gets into like portfolio type and like, you know, so there's a couple questions that are interesting there. One is like, what are you saving for? You know, like, are you saving for something, a house in 3 or 5 years? We're going to, if that's the case, we're going to recommend a much more conservative allocation because we don't want you to lose that money, right? To be honest, if I'm saving for a house, I did not invest. So I just want to throw that out there. Unless it's like 10 years, then I did invest. I invested a little bit and I took it out when it's doing well. But you know, if you have these short-term goals, it could be. But if you're investing for building wealth or something that's 10 years down the line and you're really comfortable, you can create like a portfolio that has maybe 90% stocks and 10% bonds, right? It's more aggressive. So like there's that big variance depending on where you are. There's a question there on that. We also have another thing. A lot of people were like, I don't want that huge, like, I just want all the companies that are exciting. I want the climate only, right? I mean, even though the rest of the portfolio is really built to stabilize and reduce risk, and it does, but they're like, I don't want to invest in Coca-Cola, right? You know, and you're like, okay, well, you don't have to invest in Coca-Cola in the climate only. You also like, we're robo-advisors, so we don't have the ability to make individual stock like lift outs, but we have a version for people that are like want something that is a little bit, you know, more straightforward.
Okay.
You know, so we do have that. So
highly
like
tailored to individual needs and desires.
Yeah. And then the last thing is, what type of account do you want? And this is usually where we see people have the most blocks, because basically no one has gotten great financial literacy training, right?
For sure.
And you're like, a tax advantaged account? What the hell is that?
Yeah, what is that?
Great question. I don't know.
Yeah, right? It's why we have a whole chapter in our Ultimate Guide to Sustainable Investing that is dedicated purely to financial literacy. So you might get there. Now, the most common thing is, if you have an old 401k that you are rolling over, you likely are going to need to pick what's called an IRA, which is like an individual retirement account. That is like the most common. There's another version of that that's called a Roth IRA. The big difference is the way in which they're tax advantaged. They're both for retirement. So any money that goes into those, there are like stipulations if you want to pull out money before you're 59 and a half. That's a very weird age. I did not make the rules. I mean, really, 59 and a half. Like, I don't, but I don't make the rules, right? So it's both built around 59 and a half. One of them is you put in money that is post-tax, like after you've been taxed on your earnings, you put your money in, but then when you take your money out, when you're older, you don't get taxed on it.
Okay.
And the other one is it goes pre-tax, and that's like your traditional one. And when you take it out, you're taxed. The idea around either one is, if you do the one where it's like pre-tax money, that you are saying like, I am making like a good income right now, and I will likely have a lower tax bracket when I retire. And so that's a good idea. The other one is saying, I don't have that many taxes. Like, I don't have that much in taxes. So I don't have to worry about that. And it's better that I pay no taxes when, like, after I retire. And that's like the broad separation. There's contribution limits and stuff, but those are like usually the two biggest questions we get on the retirement side. And then on the other side, there's a brokerage account and a trust account. Brokerage is just a standard one. It's an investment. You sell your, like when we sell stocks, it's like, there's taxes that come up with it. But like you can take it out. Like there's not like, there's regular restrictions. It's like, it's taxed if you sell your capital gains. And that's about the extent of it. And then there's a trust, which is if someone has created a trust, usually like once you get married and you start to have some property, you put your things in a trust. And so we have a version that's like a brokerage account for that. So, but what we usually see, like what is like fairly common, let's say someone in their late 20s, they have a 401k they want to roll over. They're not going to retire for 30 years. Someone for that would, they'd pick, probably a core portfolio that has both a climate and the core and a low carbon economy. They would have like a fairly aggressive model. It might be like 90% stocks or 80% stocks. And they would pick an individual retirement account. That would be a very common pathway. It's not for everybody, but that's a common pathway. Another one is like, I'm young, I'm starting out, I want to build wealth, but I may need to use this. And so maybe they're putting in some of the money that they already have saved up and want to now invest, and they might open a brokerage account. And maybe it has like a 60-40 because they might pull it out inside of 10 years. So it might only be 60% stocks. And they might do 100% stocks there too. And that would be in a brokerage account. So it's just like kind of understanding your pathways, I think, is really helpful. Cool. It's one of those things where it's like, we also have a talk to a human button on our site because we know that these questions are like, I can even see like your all like eyes are starting to glaze over, even though like you're all excited and then you hit this point.
I know the words, but not the details.
Yeah. And like, that's okay. Like if your eyes are glazing over this podcast right now, like you're a human being, because that happens to everybody. And I'd say like, that's one of our core issues of getting money into climate. And so like, if you have the capacity to do something hard, which I think most people do, given an understanding of level of importance, you'll go, okay, I just need to have a glass of wine and like set aside an hour on a Thursday night, and I'm going to do this. Right. And like you time box it, you recognize to do it, and you'll do it. We'll help you through it. If we're rolling over an old 401k, that will take more steps because we will do the legwork behind the scenes for you. Because you have to like call institutions and move money over and make sure the checks are mailed. But like we take care of all of that. and just make it easy, right?
Cool.
Because it's something that's incredibly impactful, but it's an eye glazer, and like I don't like there's so that's where we're trying to look at something boring and like reimagine how it can be something that's really exciting, that makes you not just makes you feel good, but like helps you build a life you want to live and retire into the future you actually want to retire into, instead of a burning hellscape.
Yeah.
I don't want to retire into a burning hellscape.
No.
It's a very good way to put it. Yes. No.
And we're at the critical point where we have those two options very much in front of our faces, and we need to be making
for sure. And one of the things that I found is like I was really focused on climate. I was a climate advocate for a long time. I flew on my own dime to DC to lobby with a group to like get people to pass climate policy. It was not successful, although now we have the IRA. But one of the things I found is like having that passion, like helped me learn things that would normally be onerous to do. And I felt like that was really valuable, so valuable that like myself and other people around me that have like done this are now like talking to their parents, and their parents are like, wait, you know that? Like, what other things do you know? And it's really interesting to see like the tables turn with people. And it's like, it's in an area that's kind of fun because like most people's parents, they don't really talk to them about their money. And so it's like, just for them to hear this, like there's this like level of incredulity to it where they're like, wait, what? You're sounding like my financial advisor.
Information anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're not supposed to know about money. You're my kid.
Yeah. And it's about being like, hey, Dad, I know more than you. How's that feel?
Yeah, that doesn't fly in my family. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether or not it's true. It's not true.
But it is to you.
But it is.
Everyone in the family goes, oh, Dad got schooled.
Yes.
He doesn't like this. And then that's when the popcorn comes out.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, wow. This is really cool. Can you tell people listening where they can find you and get a hold of you and start their journey?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the best place to go is our website. It's www.carboncollective.co, not .com. That will take you to a car detailing site.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So,
carboncollective.co.
We're working on it. We get bigger, we'll take over that one.
But
we're there. There's a ton of information when you're on the site. Like definitely like look over the homepage. There's a couple other pages that I think are fairly important to look at, which is like reading over the portfolios, looking at performance, looking at the climate solution stocks. Like I think that's really exciting. If you want to get super nerdy, you can go into the Ultimate Guide to Sustainable Investing. And that's really good. And there's an incentive if you pass that test. So if you get stuck at any of the way and you're getting to that eye glaze moment, just hit that talk to the human button in the top right. And you'll probably get set up with either James or Mari. And they're both really lovely human beings.
I love that. I love that language too. Talk to a human, because it can feel so like weird, robotic when thinking about numbers and So that's
yeah. I mean, I think a part of it's intentional, to have these really complex, terminologies that makes people sound smart. But I think also part of it is like it just is complex, and we don't have that much familiarity with it. And and I think as you develop more familiarity, it's like, oh, I know what this is. You know? And
there's a learning curve.
Yeah. So we're here. We'd love to see people. We hope people find it as inspiring, and like that a better world is possible.
Yeah.
And we can do it, and we're responsible for it.
Yeah, we have the power to do it and make those changes.
We don't have all the power, but we have some power. It's important to use it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And this is a beautiful, really, really beautiful way to really empower this community to take that back.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate it. Yeah, so like I'm always happy to help. And people want to find me on LinkedIn and talk about how to work in climate. I always take those calls too. So
Nice.
you can find me on LinkedIn.
Nice. That was incredible. Thank you. Thank you so much, Breene. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're so welcome.
Thank you so much. And thank you, everybody, for hanging around and talking and listening about Carbon Collective with Breene Murphy. Have a wonderful day.
Bye.
Bye.